Yes, Geordies, welcome back to another episode. The first thing I want to say, as always, I hope everyone's well. The second thing I want to say, what a time it is to be a Newcastle United fan. Just think about where we were 5 years ago. We've won a trophy, qualified for Champions League twice, and just think about the season we've got ahead. We're going to be welcoming Barcelona at St. James's Park. We're going to be going away to PSG. These are incredibly exciting times for Newcastle United, and this is why we should be embracing it. Now, I'm going to say something I never, ever thought I would say, and I might have to whisper it because I generally thought these words would never ever come out my mouth. And listen, I agree with Mark GOLDBRIDGE. I'm going to tell you why throughout this video, but today in this video, we're going to do a different style. We're not going to look at players per se. We're going to look at Newcastle United as a whole, how we're going to learn from this transfer window. Again, I can't believe I'm going to agree with Mark GOLDBRIDGE. We're going to look at the Champions League squad that's been announced, and then I want to talk about our squad as a whole, and then do we even need a sporting director and a CEO, and how we can move forward as a football club, what signings to make, off-field development, multi-club model. We're going to be discussing it all. But look, this is just my opinion. Opinions aren't facts, so I might not be right, so I want to hear your opinion throughout this episode. And again, I'll say this like every other episode. I generally respect and like hearing other people's opinions. So make sure you comment your opinion in the below. So let's get cracking, because I'm honestly probably only going to do this once throughout my YouTube career, if you want to call it a career. But I agree with Mark GOLDBRIDGE, because he's come out and said Newcastle United have had a better transfer window than Manchester United. And he is absolutely spot on. What have I been telling you guys, right? I've been saying throughout this transfer window, we will have a good end of this window. What have we done? I believe we've had a good end to this window, and I'll tell you why we've had a better transfer window than Man United, because transfer windows aren't about the names that you bring in. It's about where you strengthen, where you need to strengthen, and it's also about building a squad that complements each other. I do actually believe Matthias Cunha, Brian Mbeumo, and Benjamin Sesko are good signings for United, but I don't think they were the areas they needed to strengthen this window. We've actually strengthened areas that we needed to strengthen. Right wing, right centre-back, an upgrade in midfield, and a better striking partnership than what we had last season. So based off that, we've had a better transfer window than Man United. I do believe Man United have missed a trick this window, because what they should have done, they've got Bruno to play that number 10 position, so bring in one of Matthias Cunha or Brian Mbeumo, and then bring in a midfielder, because then you can play Bruno and either Matthias Cunha and Brian Mbeumo as a number 10, and then you've got a natural midfielder. But I did tell you guys we would have a good end to this window. Now, I think it might take a little bit of time to click, but once it does, I think we'll be better for it. But moving forward, I wanted to discuss the Champions League squad that's been announced, because we've listed a 21-man squad. Goalkeepers Nick Pope, Aaron Ramsdale. Defenders Sven Botman, Dan Burn, Fabian Schär, Malik Chow, Emil Kraft, Tino Livramento, Kieran Trippier. Midfielders Bruno Guimaraes, Joe Linton, Jacob Ramsey, Sandro Tonali, and Joe Willock. Then our forwards, Big Nick, Johan Wissa, Will Asula, Harvey Barnes, Anthony Elanga, Anthony Gordon, Jacob Murphy. Looking at that squad, I think it's strong. I think it's better than the squad we had 2 years ago. And I'm already starting to imagine how we can beat Barcelona's high line with the players like Anthony Elanga, Anthony Gordon, using their raw pace to get him behind. Can't wait for that Barcelona game. But there's also additional players set to feature. I don't like using the terminology B-list, because I think that's just for clickbait. If you're saying Lewis Hall's in B-list, Lewis Miley's in B-list. But youngsters like Lewis Hall, Lewis Miley, goalkeeper Max Thompson are all eligible to play, but they don't need to be forwarded to UEFA until the day before a match. So who misses out? Goalkeepers Mark Gillespie and John Ruddy, which is no surprise. Defenders Harrison Ashby, which in my opinion is no surprise. And then centre-back Jamal Lascelles. They all failed to make the squad. Now, unlike Lewis Hall, Lewis Miley, they are definitely not eligible to play and cannot be forwarded to UEFA a day before the match. One thing I will say, I think it's a shame for Jamal Lascelles, because I think he's representing the club with great dignity. And I think he has the ability to look back at these last UEFA Champions League quite proudly, especially those games against PSG at home, where he played along Fabian Schär, was absolutely terrific. So just want to say thank you. I think he can look back and say, yeah, do you know what? I played my part in this club. I've given these fans some moments, some nights under the lights that they'll never forget. So yeah, like, it's unfortunate he misses out, but he can definitely look back at moments like that and say, yeah, I'm proud of that. Just in case there's somebody out there that hasn't seen already, these are the dates for the UEFA Champions League fixtures. Now, our opening game is on a Thursday night, which is quite unusual because Champions League is played across a Tuesday and Wednesday. So because of TV rights, you've got to spread the games. Because of the deal feel there's got to be a game on a Thursday. So yeah, our opening Champions League night is against Barcelona on a Thursday night at 8 p.m. That's exciting. And it's only 2 weeks away. And then we'll travel to St. Union Gilloise on the 1st of October, and that's a 5:45 kickoff. And then the rest of the games are all 8 o'clock kickoff. Benfica at home, Athletic Club at home, Marseille away, Bayer Leverkusen away, PSV at home, and then the last one, PSG away. Can't even lie, guys, I'm so excited. This is everything football gives. For moments, nights like this, whether you're underdogs or not, it doesn't really matter. You want to see your team playing against the best. And that's exactly why being a Newcastle United fan right now is exciting. But I just want to bring us back down to earth a little bit, if you don't mind. And I wanted to look at our squad as a whole, because I was looking at it yesterday and we have the 3rd oldest squad in the Premier League. Now, I've put our squad into 3 categories. We've got with youth, and I categorize youth 18 to 23. Then you've got your peak players, where they should be performing at their maximum. That's 24 to 28. And then you've got your aging players, 29 or plus. Now, I actually think our squad is more balanced than last season. When I'm speaking about balance, I mean a balance between youth, peak, and aging, because last season we were very, very top heavy. But I do have a few concerns, because we all know we're going into a gunfight against PSR with a knife. How do we sharpen that knife? By having valuable assets that you can sell. We don't really have many valuable assets unless we're going to sell a player that's in their peak. Because if you look at our squad, the only players that you can look at and probably bring in money for, Harrison Ashby, which you're not going to bring in much. Joe Willock, he's 25, you're bringing a decent amount of money. Or Harvey Barnes, if we sell him now, this is when we'll be able to offload him for maximum value, because as he gets older, his value is just going to decrease. Then the aging players, you're not going to get much value from them. And we don't want to sell the likes of Bruno, Sandro Tonali, Anthony Gordon. Anthony Elanga's just come in, Malik Chow's just come in, Jacob Ramsey's just come in. So the likelihood of them leaving in the next couple of years is very slim. So when you look at it on the face of it, we don't actually have many sellable assets to boost our revenue. So what I'm trying to say is, 1, we need to bring the squad age lower to boost the ceiling across the board. And 2, we need to be able to monetize talent without devaluing our squad. So how do you do that, Antonio? You're probably asking. Well, in my opinion, we need to go back to making upside signings. Why? The obvious one. Look at Tino, look at Lewis Hall, look at Bruno to an extent, Sven Botman, Anthony Gordon, who have all been brought in at a young age and developed into better players, with also now doubled their price tag. But on top of that, they've contributed massively to get us to this point. So why would we come away from this? Now, throughout these videos, I've been beating the drum about bringing in youth. I would probably do that anyways, but with PSR now involved, I think it's highly important. Of course, you don't need to make every single transfer somebody that's 18, 19, 20, but I think you've got to work a little bit smarter rather than harder, because like I always say, we're going into a gunfight against PSR with a knife. The likes of Chelsea, Liverpool, Man United, Arsenal are all going into that gunfight with a gun, so we're already in the negative. So when you sign in youth players, they typically command lower transfer fees and wages. That makes them easier to amortize across longer contracts at lower wages, and if they're young enough and developed internally and sold after a few seasons, they generate pure profit on the books. Or even if they're not young enough to develop internally, but you bring them in at the age of like 21, because of their age and the inflation in football, their valuation is not going to decrease. So you can sell them later down the line for a higher fee than what you bought them for. That is critical for staying within PSR limits, but it's also critical for growing your squad. Now, the best case scenario is if they absolutely shine in your squad and they help the club progress, because then you look back and think, well, he's played for us for 5 years. We've got into Champions League 2 out of those 5 years. We've won a trophy. That is money well spent. Now, that is the ideal scenario. For me, every time we make a signing, I want him to thrive at the club. I want him to go above and beyond his ability, because that does multiple things. 1, it helps the team on the pitch, which is the most important. But 2, his valuation is just going to increase. So I actually think we should go back to making this youth-first approach. Now, I'm not talking sign every 16-year-old around like Chelsea are doing. I'm talking like in between the ages of 18 and 24 with a bit of experience, and they're showing signs that they've got what it takes to compete at the highest level. Because signing these players also gives you a better negotiation power when it comes to selling them, loaning them, or trying to market them based on their performances. But it also means you can groom them into replacing an aging player. Let's go back to this, because I'll give you an example of what we've done this summer very well. We know Jacob Murphy's on his way out. He had his best season last season. The likelihood of him doing that again isn't high, and the likelihood of him improving at the age of 30 is very slim. So we brought in 23-year-old Anthony Elanga. That is exactly what future planning is. Now, I also do believe we're going to have to bring in another right winger next summer, because I'm looking at Jacob Murphy, and before he reaches 32, 33, I'd be looking to get as much money from him as possible next summer, because we need to take the sentimental value out of these players. Although he's been terrific for us, we need to sell him before his value keeps on decreasing. So I would sell him and look to bring in a 20-year-old that can grow alongside Anthony Elanga, and you've grown for the future, and you've got your right wing covered for the next five years. And that is exactly what I mean when I'm talking about upside signings. Because if you bring in a 20-year-old and he doesn't really find the rhythm, it doesn't really work out, you'll be able to sell him for just as much as what you bought him for, because his value is not going to decrease. Because there'll always be a manager and the club out there thinking, I can turn him into a good player. But when you try and sell 30-year-olds, 31-year-olds, no club's going to pay market value for him, because they're not going to make a profit on him in a couple of years' time. So what I want us to do as a football club, in my opinion, again, it might not be right. You might not agree with it, but let's 2-year plan, even 3-year or 4-year plan. Because when you look at our squad now, you think of the likes of Jacob Murphy, who's hitting 30. I'd already be thinking in my head, who can we target now for next summer to replace Jacob Murphy? We all know Kieran Trippier, this is probably his last season at Newcastle United. Who can we target now to replace me next summer? We'll already open up discussions for next summer. This is exactly why you need a sporting director, because he targets all these players while Eddie Howe's getting on with the season. Another example, Fabian Schär's 33. We've just brought in Malik Chow. Now we're going to need another centre-back next summer, because at 34, you're not going to want to rely on Fabian Schär. So I would already be looking at a centre-back now that's young. Start scouting him now to see how he develops over the next year. But this is what I mean. We should be planning for future windows right now. And I just don't feel we did that this summer. And I don't feel like we've done it over the past couple of windows. And that's what I want to see. Failing to prepare is preparing to fail. And I think that's the only thing that let us down. Because what I'm talking about is trying to build a multi-window narrative. So buy in before you sell. Buy in before players retire. It just ensures balanced squad. It ages profiles to avoid generational gap. It also maintains tactical coherence. So the sporting director should be having a conversation with Eddie Howe and saying, are you looking to adapt or change or evolve your tactical philosophy over the next 5 years? If Eddie Howe says yes, then you target players that could help him do that. If he's looking to remain the same, then you target players that fits his philosophy right now. So it allows you to grow as a football club, but plan ahead. So what I'm talking about is just phasing in tactical evolutions rather than just saying to the squad, right, we're going to mix it up right now. We're going to change whole tactics and the dynamics of the squad, but it also ensures that you're covering across key positions in the squad. Now, for me, when I'm building the squad, the first thing I'd try and do is build the spine of the team. You want the spine of the team to be the most consistent players on the pitch. You want that spine of the team to nearly almost be in their peak, because they're going to be your leaders. That's just the way I see it. Because if you look at across all the successful teams, the spine of the team has always been the players that are performing at their maximum. But it also allows you to monitor wonder kids around the world. I would make this the club speciality, because there's only pros that come with it. If you sign a wonder kid and it doesn't work out, you'll be able to move him on for a decent value of money. If you bring in a wonder kid and he absolutely thrives at your club, then you're absolutely laughing, because he's just doubled his price tag and he's making your club successful. But he's also expanding your club on a global stage. Because if you look across every single fan in the world now, they get excited by young wonder kids. So if you can try and bring in the next big thing, I know that's difficult while that club's around, but it's only going to help your football club grow on a global stage. So how do you do all this? Well, you need a sporting director to do it, because a sporting director in an ideal world lays out a 360-degree strategy of the club, making sure that the club is aligned from recruitment, analyst, academy level, all the way through to first team. So in theory, a sporting director connects the dots. Now, I want to let you in on a little secret, and I haven't told many people this, and you can believe us or choose not to believe us, but I actually do have emails to prove it. I just don't want to put them on, and I didn't plan to say this. It's just come to my head. But when Dan Ashworth was at Newcastle United, I did have a few meetings with Dan Ashworth in his office talking about players, and there was a lot of players that I mentioned that are now at big clubs that are just starting to break through. Now, he was also telling us about his role, and this is how I learned a lot about sporting director's role, because I spent days with Dan Ashworth. And let me tell you something, I know he gets a lot of stick from Newcastle United fans, but he's actually a really nice guy. Like, generally, he's just humble. down to earth, like just a really nice guy. But I generally think if he hadn't left for Man United, I'd be working at Newcastle United right now. But the fact that we went into a transfer window without a sporting director who left just before the transfer window opened, you've got to give your hats off to Eddie Howe, because he's done a very good job. Because as sporting director, they oversee player recruitment and transfers, team strategies and beliefs, youth development, contract negotiations, sporting infrastructure and facilities, budgeting and financial planning. This is everything that Eddie Howe would have had to take on, as well as taking the club on a pre-season tour. So it's vital that we get the next appointment right that aligns with the way we want to grow the club. So I'm going to be honest, I do believe we went in this window slightly unprepared without a CEO or sporting director. We should have hired one as soon as we knew that Paul Mitchell, Eddie Howe weren't seeing eye to eye. That's when we should have looked and thought, yeah, this isn't going to end well. It's clearly going to go one way, and that is Paul Mitchell leaving the club. So we should have already, in the back of our minds, had somebody lined up. But yeah, I'm not going to sit here and criticize it, because I generally believe we had a good window. But there was moments in that window where it was a little bit sporadic, where we're just looking all over the place. We're going in for João Pedro, then we're going in for Tiki, then we're going in for these guys. And the truth is, when we go in for these established players that are getting touted as the next big thing already, but they're already proven themselves in senior football, we can't compete financially with the likes of Chelsea, Man United. Well, we could if PSR didn't have our hands tied behind our backs, but unfortunately we're in this position. So what I'm trying to say is we've got to identify these players, look at our squad, already identify who needs replacing in the next few years, and sign these players before they become too well known. So I really do want to see us bringing in a sporting director ASAP, because without a sporting director, the club lacks a central decision maker to navigate complex negotiations, because I can guarantee you the top clubs will already be negotiating with other clubs for next summer, because negotiations start very, very early leading up to a transfer window. Jason Ito, ex-Arsenal man, or Ross Wilson, ex-Rangers, Southampton, Nottingham Forest, are reportedly in contention. Then I would also bring in a CEO, especially because there's a lot to do behind the scenes for Newcastle United, in my opinion. There's plans underway for a 70,000 seat stadium. We need to drive global sponsorships, and I'm talking media rights, brand positioning, getting sponsorships for training grounds, training kits. All that is done by the CEO, and by bringing in better and bigger sponsorships, it's going to sharpen that knife in our gunfight against PSR. And I want to end the episode with my last point, multi-club model. I actually think this is what Newcastle should be looking to do, because when we are looking to sign these upside talents, we can develop them at our feeder club. And I'm not saying just copy Chelsea. We don't need to do it exactly like them, but there's plenty of upsides and positives to the multi-club model. By bringing in these young talents and letting them develop at a club that you trust, it risks them being unsuccessful, but it also allows you to plan their growth rather than relying on clubs that don't really care about your club. But you can also unify scouting networks across all the clubs. Even if it's just two, you can have the same preparation and model in terms of scouting and recruitment, but it also helps your club grow globally. There's more eyes on the club and what you're doing from different regions, but it also helps with sponsorships. And what I mean by that is, when you're negotiating with sponsorships, let's say if they're offering you £1 million a year, you can say, well, we want 1.5 million, because what we're also going to do is have your brand and our sister club that's in Spain. So we're not only going to represent you in England, we're going to represent you in Spain as well. And then they think, oh yeah, more global exposure for me. So it's little things like that the multi-club help with. And then you've got the financial balancing, which I believe the likes of Nottingham Forest, Chelsea are all doing. The owners can spread financial risk across all clubs, but it also gives you that clear pathway to sign undervalued talent and flip them for a profit. So if you've got a club that is flipping talent left, right and center, you can balance the books into your club. That allows you to spend more. It's sneaky, but it's clever. And if you don't even want to do the multi-club model, you can always invest in a club overseas. What I mean by this is, let's take Palmeiras, for example, or Independiente del Valle. That's one of the best academies in Ecuador. You can say to them, right, we'll invest in your youth facilities. We'll send you the best coaches to develop talent if you give us first picks on the talents that are coming out of your academy. You're helping them by making their club better, but you're also helping yourself by having the top talents that come out of their academy. So there's plenty of ways you can do it. You don't necessarily need to buy a whole new football club. You can work smarter, not harder. But again, I want to hear your opinions on this video because it's a different style, and opinions are opinions and not facts. You might disagree with me, and that's okay. I can live with it. I'm a big boy now. I've had my haircut. I'm only playing, but yeah, let me know your thoughts in the below. How do we grow as a football club? Because we need to break into that cartel, and I think we're on the cusp. We just need to try and make that next step. But how we do it, I'm sure everybody's got a different opinion. But as always, guys, if you've enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you don't, I'm going to come after you and throw mangoes at you. But I genuinely appreciate your time, all the support that you're giving us. It's quite overwhelming, actually. I can't even lie. But thank you very much to everybody. Stay safe. Take care. Final thing to say, away the lads.